Hey everyone, welcome back to the Contractor Growth Network Podcast. I'm Logan Shinholster, and today is part 2 of my interview with AJ Ballantine from Cornerstone Remodeling, all about his design process. As you can imagine, if you have not listened to the first part, go back, start there so you understand what's going on and why we're dealing with it. But this episode is all about, he's almost like infusing design into sales persuasion and showing people confidence and certainty and that, hey, you're already pretty far along the process. Let's keep going. And that is how he is closing a lot more deals and a lot bigger deals, because it is actually meeting their ideal client exactly where the ideal client wants to be met at. So without further ado, I love this episode. Let's jump in. So back to the beginning of this stuff, like with RENDR, are you guys, and just so everybody knows, this is a software that AJ has created to help solve this problem. So it's very cool that it's not just a tech person coming in and creating something. It's somebody that's actually in the industry. I mean, this is how JobTread was created as well, which is very cool. But with RENDR, are you having clients scan their home and upload it, or is this in that first? Though when you do the in-home consult, whoever's going out to do the consultation, they're the ones walking through and scanning everything.
It's an either or. So there have been some cases, RENDR has the one and only invite to capture feature in the market. So if you wanted to get some extra intel back from a homeowner, you can actually invite them to scan. So if they've got the right device, again, it's all about device compatibility, but if they have the right device, you can actually send them an invite, and it walks them through. It's so simple. They click a link in an email. So we'll just say, hey, do you mind scanning your space so that we can see it? You're going to get an email, and as soon as they get that, they click the button, an email. They just walk through. They scan their space with their phone. As soon as they put it down, I get an email back that says, hey, so-and-so just completed the scan of their space, and I have all of the data that I need. I have a floor plan. I've got elevations of all the walls, door placement, window placement. I can see furniture, sinks, windows, toilets. You name it. Everything inside of the space. And then I also have the 3D model that comes back with it, which is pretty cool, right? So I can drop that right into the chief architect. So Logan, you're in North Carolina, right?
Charlotte.
So If you said, hey, on this call, can you show me how it works? What I would do is I would just send you a link, and you would get it, and we could have this conversation, and you could literally just touch a button, and you could just sit there and just scan your room. And then I could pull it up on this call in 10 seconds and show you what the floor plan of that space looks like. We could talk about options for renovating the space, all on the call without having to terminate the call. So it's pretty cool. So in some cases we are doing that. It's saved us, round trips, in the DC area can be, you can go 15 miles and it takes you an hour and a half to get there. So in a lot of cases, if it's further away, or if we really want to do some more digging before we really spend the time to go out there, we'll send them an invite and have them scan it so we can get a good chance to see it. But a lot of times what we're doing is we're just using our own, we outfitted our office with iPads, and they go and they scan it with the iPad, whether it's the designer or the project developer. And they'll pull up the floor plan in front of the client. The clients think it's the coolest thing in the world, by the way. We're very tech forward with Cornerstone. It's one of our differentiators. We kind of want to change the industry that way. And so we're on the forefront of being we're the only ones that walk in there with an iPad, and when they see us scanning the space, they're always like, what are you doing? We're like, yeah, we're measuring. They've never seen it before. So of course the perceived value of Cornerstone just went up. They're like, whoa, these guys are cutting edge. They're different, It's been really cool to see, how RENDR has kind of proved that perception of our business early on, and in ways that, we were nervous about it at first, like the invite to capture feature. We were thinking, gosh, are they going to think that we're just kind of stiff arming them? Like, culture, no, you're not worth us coming out. It's quite the opposite. They think it is the coolest thing ever that we were able to access measurements from their space without having to come out to their home. They think it's the neatest thing ever.
Now, with this, like, the wow factor is there, but I think one of the things that I'd like to talk a little bit about is like the finesse associated with talking about these things, because it's the same way that, you go to Sandler or you learn some other sales process of, how do you actually just understand like a client's budget? There's a right way to do it. And then there's the way of like, okay, AJ, what's your budget for this project? And a lot of times if you're newer at sales, if somebody teaches you how to bracket pricing, they'll go, oh, well, I'm already doing that. I already asked for the budget. But the way that you ask is, super, super important. So instead of what you're talking about, the stiff arm side of going, hey, AJ, I'm going to send you over this link. I want you to go ahead and scan your room, send it back to me. Like that could feel very transactional and more of a, I'm kind of trying to disqualify you out because I don't want to go out to the space. So how do you guys approach that conversation with prospects to make them feel the love, but also make sure that they understand that you're just really trying to make sure you're efficient with both parties' times?
We talk about it as if it's just part of the process of how you work at Cornerstone. We kind of pride ourselves on being tech forward. So we'll say, hey, as a next step, what we'd like to do is we're going to send you an invite. We're going to ask you to scan the space. So that way we get some extra intel prior to us coming out. They don't know it's anything different. We use it as a tactic, to perhaps price qualify them or pre-qualify them out the door if we get a sense that they're not really our client. But to them, it's just business as usual. Hey, part of our process is this. And that's how we present it. And of course, we love the experience that they have, in scanning can kind of change the tide as well. If they get this and they see that, whoa, they're really tech forward, then we, when we're talking about the conversation, I'll give you an example here why I'm sharing this. So we had one client that we kind of didn't really know if they were going to go with us or not. She wanted a master bathroom done, and we kind of said her budget was $75,000. We're like, okay, we still don't know if she's really the right customer for us, so we're going to send her an invite. So we said, hey, look, as a part of this process, what we're going to ask you to do is scan your space, and that way we can take a look at it and kind of confirm these details prior to what's coming out. She just thought that that's how we operate. Well, the coolest thing was she actually scanned her space. The space came back, and the master bathroom was 400 square feet. It was ridiculously large. We're like, oh crap! We just told her $75,000 was a good budget, but now it's not. So we were able to have another conversation with her about that budget and say, hey, look, based on the scan that we got back, your master bathroom is enormous. You would need probably twice that in your budget. And she said, I've heard that, but I didn't want to believe it. But, since you guys have seen the space, I'm starting to assume that that's what I'm going to spend. We ended up doing the bathroom for her. It's having a conversation about a budget it only goes as far as how much the client's willing to trust you, right? So if they think that you're pulling numbers out of thin air just to kind of sniff them out, they're going to go to the next guy. But what we were able to do is hook her with this invite to capture, right? She actually scanned her space, and now she knows that we have the floor plan. We're not just pulling numbers out of thin air. We're literally looking at this and saying, hey, your bathroom's probably going to cost you $150,000. She ended up going with us because we were the first ones to get her that information with knowing what the actual space looked like, and we didn't even have to go out there to do it. So there's a lot of the scary piece that I think the contractors have as far as if we start doing things more remote or we start doing things faster, we're going to start losing the things that I know work well for my business, which are high touch, relationship building, in person, arduous processes. But I'm here to tell you, we've challenged all of them. Well, maybe not all, but we're challenging them one by one and finding out that the opposite can be true as long as you do it right.
Yeah, I know when we first started at our house, we were originally trying to get our basement redone, and I filled a contact form for somebody, and I got an email back, and they, let off with the subject line had my last name in it, but they misspelled the last name, which, to me, I filled out the contact form, that should be just copy and paste. But the response back just said, hey, we can give you a quick budget, take some photos of the space, email it back with what you're looking for, and we'll snap over a quick budget. And I was just like, no, this is I don't know these people. I don't know who this other person on the other end of the email is. If I'm going to take photos of my personal home, I don't know where this is going. And maybe that's a little bit, I don't know, too conspiracy theorist-esque, but I just didn't know who they were. And the fact that they were saying, send some photos, tell me what you're looking for, and I can give you a ballpark. To me, I'm in the very least, this is a 20-minute phone call from you guys that we can just FaceTime if you want me to do that. That's at least I'm talking to somebody, but it just felt so transactional that I just said, hey, thanks, but we're going to go in a different direction. Never heard back from them, and that was it. So it just felt very rushed because nobody, if they had said, hey, look, I'm going to call you. We're going to chat for a little bit. You know what next steps would be really helpful for us is send over some photos. I have a little bit about what you're looking for, and I can give you some ballpark pricing based off of what you're saying here. That's a very different scenario than just a cold email that comes right back saying, hey, send some photos, what you want, and we can tell you just to see if we're in the same playing field. And I was just like, for this type of project, like I want somebody that's not afraid to pick up the phone and call me and just say, hey, let's talk about this stuff, versus trying to just weed me out is really what it felt like.
One of the things that we picked up in Sandler Tros, we did get our staff trained. I think that's one thing that I would suggest anybody who's got a sales staff, or even if you're just an owner operator and you've never been formally trained with sales, there are a lot of benefits to getting some formal sales training. So we actually did this with Sandler, and one of the things that we picked up were pattern interrupters. It's something that it's just a simple phone call. Phone calls are now pattern interrupters. Before, we were never calling because everybody was calling, right? And everybody hated it. Everybody hated getting those telemarketers calling their home right around dinner time. Now everybody's going to text and chat. And despite the fact that we do those things, we have messenger, capabilities through our construction management software. We realized the phone call was really important. When we were trying to deliver a first pass proposal, and we have a couple of questions, we pick up the phone and call them. 9 times out of 10, they pick up because nobody's really used to picking up the phone anymore. So when they see a local phone number calling them, they're apt to pick it up because, okay, well, this is different. I should probably answer this. What if it's my doctor? What if it's my kid's school calling? And they end up picking up the phone. It's easy to get an answer, and they actually appreciate it. So the phone call is not it's not a dead art. It's actually alive, and it's the pattern interrupter that I think is the key to a lot of people's success. They just pick up the phone. Our designers were always like, I'll send them an email. I was like, pick up the phone. Like, oh, have they looked at the proposal yet? No, I'll send them an email. Like, call them. Make sure. Come on, touch base. I think the phone call is really important for that.
And one of the things that you guys do at the end is you talked about sending out like just that first pass proposal in Canva. In your first pass proposal, I'm guessing you're not cornering yourself into this is your final price, because then you have a whole second part of your design phase. Is this just like a range that you're giving them based off of your findings?
No, it's a proposal. It's pretty fleshed out. There are obviously there's some wiggle room in there, right? Because there are things that we're not doing. We're not selecting cabinets, and cabinets are a huge piece of a kitchen proposal. So we have allowances built in based on that Moscow report, right? So if we know that they'd like to have inset cabinets, we'll give them allowance for inset cabinets. And one of the notes that we'll put in is like, hey, look, this allowance is $55,000 for your cabinets. If you went with regular overlay, full overlay cabinets, your allowance would be 35. Let them do the math, right? But they know within reason, plus or minus 10%, with that first pass proposal, if they stuck within those allowances, that's exactly what they're going to spend on that project, right? There are some things that we note that we have not yet discovered, right? We'll note things, like we need to confirm what's in this wall. We need to confirm, price on installing gas for these appliances, or whether or not you're going to need a meter upgrade. We'll leave notes in there like that, but for the most part, we do tell clients that you're going to be within plus or minus 10%, because we are hella good at pricing projects. And now that we're pretty refined on what the scope of the project is going to be, we know the risks. Like, hey, we're going to have to look at this wall to confirm this, but if this is true, you're going to spend this much. Part of that second phase is diving deeper into that. We'll do the scopes and we'll cut holes and so on. But our clients know that. It's a lot about expectations up front. If this pans out, this is how much you're going to spend. And for them, that initial estimate is what they cling to. So our goal is to make sure that initial estimate goes out and it is almost all the time beat. When they start making selections, their allowances are coming in under that amount. Because we found out that if customers are happy with how they're doing on the budget, they're willing to spend more, not only up to that initial budget, but they save $5,000 on cabinets, they're willing to spend $10,000 on a fireplace, So we go in pretty strong on that initial proposal, and we tell them like, hey, we show them, we haven't talked about it much, but we have a journey book that we show our clients. And that comfort zone usually, has a range of like lower and higher end. And we show clients in that journey book, all the customers that have come before you have also given us comfort zone budgets. And we've had a target range here, and this is where they ended up coming in. And you see throughout that journey book, that arrow, it's almost like a compass or like a speedometer. It depends. Like some customers ended up spending more, some ended up spending less, but generally speaking, most of our clients ended up spending exactly what they said that they wanted to spend. And it's because we were able to deliver a really good option for them, with a really good, healthy expectation on the budget range too.
So when you're sending over this first pass proposal, are you putting in essentially like the high end potential materials, finishes, stuff like that,
No.
and then saying, so I guess, are you just doing it based off of
based on the Moscow?
Okay.
Yeah. What things are really important to you? And we're asking, we're not really getting into the nitty gritty on, what kind of faucets do you want in these places, but we do find out what's important to them. Do you want to have, are you really like keen on like spending, you can spend $100,000 on fixtures in the bathroom, right? But and most of our customers are out front and they'll say, hey, look, we're not willing, we're not going build a grade here, but we also don't really need the high end luxury things. So okay, great. We know exactly where we're going to put you then. We're going to probably outfit you with all Kohler Delta fixtures. And, at that point, they're all allowances, but they're all, so you got $1,500 for your shower fixtures, whether it's the 3-way and the handheld and so on. We're not putting $8,000 in, right? So we know within reason about what they're going to spend in all these different selections. The hardest ones to nail down are unfortunately, the bigger ones, the cabinets, countertops, a tile for a bathroom. You want to go all high end, natural marble, or are you looking to keep it a little bit more? But the Moscow report really does tell us what they're interested in doing. If real marble ends up on that Moscow report as a must or should have, that's what gets priced. But if it's not, then we price it with regular stuff based on their budget. If real marble tile is low end on their priority and they have $150,000 to spend on their master bathroom and we're coming in at like 110, guess what we're going to do? We're going to throw that marble tile up there. We're going to say, hey, look, we were able to get some of your could haves, like that marble tile that you said that you might like. This proposal includes those things too. So the Moscow report really does come in handy for picking and choosing how we put that proposal together.
And then on this, like when you're sending this proposal over, I mean, the natural thing I would think would be, well, this is just a first pass. I'm just going to send over just a PDF with some numbers. You slap our logo at the top, and that's what they're going to, accept or have questions around. But the fact that you're using Canva, which is a design software, you're making this thing, I presume the reason that you're using Canva, aesthetically very pleasing. Why? I mean, like, walk me through that side of things because it's very easy in my mind to say, well, the marketing has to look great, but once we get to the nitty gritty of the contracts, like that's more legal stuff. So we don't need to focus on the aesthetics of it. Why are you guys putting the emphasis on the aesthetics for these contracts?
It all comes back to the empathy mapping exercise. We have clients that, they didn't want to feel left out and they didn't want to be in the dark. They wanted to create these interpersonal relationships with the people that they want to work with. They want to know what steps are next. And of course, with us, it was about the perceived value, right? So again, if they're spending $2,000 to get an estimate from us, we don't want them to think that they spent $2,000 and all they got was a spreadsheet and a pretty JPEG of a kitchen that's not theirs. Right? No. We wanted to make sure, like, we needed almost like a statement that, hey, you paid for this, and basically set down this big, deliverable in front of them. So for us to compile this, we used to send emails with attachments, or have them by the office and then show them all these things individually. It wasn't cohesive. Right. So for us to deliver the amount of value that we promised them early on, if you pay us 1%, you're going to get something that's going to knock your socks off. And for us to deliver that, this is why it was really important for us to make it aesthetically pleasing. I can show you this too, so that you're not watching my screen and me trying to figure out where this is. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up so you can see it. That was the first one. That was the first one that I pulled up here. Goodness gracious, hold on one second.
And one thing I was just trying to pull it up, guys, that I want to like call out is the fact that he talked about the perceived value versus value. I think a lot of this is, you guys go out, you do your measurements, you figure out what stuff costs, you take all this time behind the scenes to put together this PDF doc, but I don't, as the consumer, as the homeowner, I don't see all that stuff. All I see is, oh man, they charged me $2,000 just to price my job out, and it feels slimy, like they just wanted to somehow weave $2,000 back into it versus like, well, actually, if you're going to put all this work into it, you might as well get credit for putting all that work into it.
Yeah. So it takes, it takes you $2,000 worth of effort to put together an estimate. I'll tell you that. Every contractor listening to this, the estimates are probably I think they're most excruciating piece of this puzzle. Like all the details that need to go into an estimate to protect me, right? I'm trying to make sure I'm not underselling my stuff. Like, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of experience. I can get faster at it the more I've been in the business, but gosh, that's worth a lot of money. But clients see it; they're getting a spreadsheet or this estimate from whatever, and it's not worth it. So we, like you said, we go out and make it look like $1 million. So we develop these first pass proposals in Canva. We just took a template and kind of, changed it and morphed it into something that we felt like we wanted to deliver. All of these pieces you kind of see, they're all placeholders. So one of the things that we took from empathy mapping was that, again, we wanted to make sure that the clients felt like this was an interpersonal journey. So each designer has their own template with their own avatar. And instead of writing in the email, hey, this is what we did. We focused on, we got you that big island, and we really wanted to make sure that the kitchen looked like this. So here's a couple things that we focused on. Well, now that ends up in the proposal as a quote from the designer that they met on that initial discovery call, and then of course in person as well. So now that designer's familiar face, I can see it in this proposal, and now it's personal. It's personalized. This image back here, these are literally like we can take, we could take any image. Forgive me, I don't have any. Let's see. We could just drop an image. You can kind of see that it changes the background based on. Let me get rid of this. Changes the background based on the image. So we'll throw in an image of a kitchen or maybe the 3D design, but it changes it automatically. We drop in the floor plan. We give them a 3D overview. We've stripped these back. They're not showing tile layouts anymore, but and then we include the estimate in here. We export a PDF from JobTread, which is the software that we use. We drop it right in, and one of the last pages in here is this guy. So back to the empathy mapping. Clients didn't want to feel like they were left in the dark, and they wanted to know what was going to be next. So we're kind of leading them in this journey, right? So we put a timeline in here that basically shows them where they are in the process with our firm. They already did a discovery call, and they've got this first pass. Like, what's next? Design and selections. So this did two things for us. One was it helped them remember where they were in the process with us, and two, it helps drive home again this whole feeling that they are much further with us than they are with anyone else. Right? So they're already halfway through the process with us. We know how long this design and selection phase is going to take. It's 4 to 6 weeks or whatever, 8 to 12 weeks in some cases with additions. Doesn't matter. They're already more than halfway through this process with us. Look how easy this is. I'm already 3 steps in. Why not continue with Cornerstone? So that was huge. Again, every impression we leave the client is, you're already done with so much. Why not just continue? And 2, perceived value. They're getting this first pass proposal in 7 days from our firm. With this timeline, they were already halfway through the process with us. So in 7 days, they met us, they signed a design agreement, and we're delivering this. So we have all these touch points. They're getting all of this value in 7 days. Well, what about the competitors? What about the other guys? They're doing the same things as us. They're visiting their home. They're going to put together some designs. They're going to put together an estimate. It's going to take them 4 weeks to do it. And also, if we're doing it in 7, like, what does that tell the client about our capabilities for a project like this. In 7 days, we were able to deliver them what it's taken 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks from somebody else. Now we're planting the seeds of doubt in their minds that another contractor that's coming alongside, giving them another bid, they're starting to doubt their ability to pull this project off just because we were able to deliver everything so much faster. So all of these things kind of go and build that.
Yeah, I mean, like in 9 days, I mean, I would imagine by the time you guys are getting all this stuff sent over, that's when the estimator for the other company is like probably finally getting out there because they're not as dialed in on their process. So they've already got money spent with you, a ballpark range, understanding of what this could all look like in their hands, and they're still just trying to like get that other estimator or remodeling company owner out there just to give them like that first pass. I mean, like that's got to be hard to compete with you guys at this point if you're already in, hey,
it is. You're
close. I mean, that's crazy.
If you think about the standard design build process, it follows this. You sign a design agreement, then you go out and measure. And that, again, like I was telling you, it took about a week and a half. So there's your 9 days. So in 9 days, instead of getting, somebody out to measure the house, we're actually delivering this guy. We're delivering this first pass proposal. So we're, again, so much further on. Why not and we have had clients that end up signing up with our firm it's not the only reason why they signed with us, but what we hear is like, I'm done waiting. Like I've been waiting for this other company to give me an estimate, and like, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'd rather just proceed with your firm. They might have come in $20,000 cheaper than us. And some of these competitors, we know them. They do good work. They've got solid production processes and they pull off really big projects and they have a great reputation in the area. But we're getting the project because they took too long in the sales process. So not only am I increasing my closing percentage, but I'm also shortening my sales cycle. And we can dive into the metrics on that afterwards. But again, when we talk about boutique design builds, all this, the details that go into it. And one of the things that clients always wanted to feel is that we heard them, we were listening to them, and they felt like their needs were being met, right? So as we're prioritizing their stuff in a Moscow report, and then we're delivering, based on their comfort zone budget, a reasonably priced project that is, knocking out more of the core things. We also wanted to let them know that we're also listening on the design side. So we built this, mood board, right? It's just 3 images. These are also placeholders. And what the designer does in that initial call is they try to ask a couple questions about like their style. We just want to know a little bit more about you and how you live your life. And we always hear what colors they're interested in, modern versus traditional. I don't want anything, too crazy. I love blue cabinets. I love, wood islands. Well, what we'll do is we'll take some photos from that and we'll just drop in some, inspiration. Usually they're from previous projects that we photographed. So they're all of our projects. So we drop them in. It's just like kind of an inspiration panel. Well, these paint colors here pull from colors that exist in these images. So again, you talk about what looks like a carefully crafted and curated inspiration board, mood board. This is drag and drop 3 images, change these paint colors, send it away. Takes 5 minutes, less than maybe 3 minutes just to pull the photos in. Again, it looks like, if you got this, Logan, it takes a minute to load here. If you got this, wouldn't you assume that we spent the better part of that week that you were waiting for it only working on your project?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is and even if I didn't go, well, they probably spent all week, I would go, this company has their stuff together to the point that they know what I'm looking for. This looks good. I mean, like, there's a lot of just, I don't know, like feeling stuff of like, wow, like this is professional and like this is what I'm looking for. And it goes completely against the grain of what the typical quote unquote contractor is, which is more of like the rough and rugged, we're going to pop out of our beat up truck and flick the cigarette butt out. And that's who you're getting to come in. I mean, like, I know when we got our bathroom done, like this was like knowing the style piece was super important for my wife because she had all of her Pinterest boards already done. We had already had in other rooms in the house, like, wallpaper put up. And like, if you walked into our living room, it looked like the West Elm, floor. Like
I've
it
seen
was,
that.
yeah. I mean, like that's what my wife's style is. So to then come in, like our designer who ended up, we ended up moving forward with the project. Like she also looked like she was a designer and she truly understood fashion and trends and stuff like that. So like elements like this, where it just shows we hear you. Like I think of all the stuff that you showed of this proposal, I think my favorite part is the quote from the actual designer with the photo. Like that takes it from this is a template and a stock thing we sent out to everybody, and all we did was swap out page 5, from JobTread to we actually customized this thing for you. Like that is so well thought out, and it's so simple that it's really just whatever quote you want with a photo of the designer, but all the trust and rapport that I imagine that they built up with that designer now immediately gets transferred into this document, because the first thing they see is the person that they built that trust and rapport with. So I think this is like genius.
Yeah. And really what it shows, like part of the empathy mapping again was, if we're saying that we are going to handhold them through and they get dedicated support, dedicated team members, like we're going to be your friends. We're going to walk this entire journey with you. We're here every step of the way. This did make it seem as if we put one person, this Anna Marie, one of our designers, it looks like we put her on and she was working on this and only this and for you. So what I did here is I did all of these things. I built this beautiful thing. I spent so much time putting all of this together for you, right? That infusion is clutch for us. We've seen, like I said, our closing percentage go up because they feel like, okay, well, Cornerstone is not only delivering things faster and more efficiently, but they're also listening to us and they're crafting a plan that really works well for us. And look how much they listen. Look at what they've done. Look at how much they're doing for us. Perceived value. For $2,000, this is worth $2,000. Yet, if we go back and look at my my sales process here, we have 6 to 10 hours to get to that first pass proposal.
Yeah, I mean I remember we did this with my dad's old company, Premier Ponds, where essentially in the pond world, especially in the DC area where I'm from, it's so many people moving in and out because with every the government there, like they change every 2 years, essentially people funnel in and out. And the number one reason why somebody really reaches out to get started with a pond company is they move into a house, they have a pond that's existing and they have no idea what to do with it. And they would call him and he would go, look, you got to get it cleaned, but we also do a whole pond inspection where what we're going to do is we're going to drain it, we're going to inspect everything, then we're going to clean it, fill it back up, and then we're going to educate you around the whole health of the pond, what you need to do to keep it going, because essentially this is a living, breathing ecosystem. And instead of just a walkthrough, we created like a whole checklist for them to at least walk through this with them, of like the same thing that you get when you get your oil change, of like that multi-point inspection of, I know you got your oil change, but we also tested everything on the car. And instead of just telling you what's wrong, they actually show you, we went through all these things, and it's all the same stuff that they were already doing, but now that it was like written down in a nice doc that they hand over and go, these are the things. Essentially what they were doing is they were really just creating a new scope of work for themselves anyway. So the physical nature of having something in somebody's hands, like takes it from just, potential, like, okay, you're just selling me something, over to like, oh, you actually did a full inspection on my pond. Right. This looks great. And now they have something to go back and show their spouse of, hey, we're at a 4 out of 10. These are the things that we can do to get it to a 7. And if we really want to get it to a 10, these are the other things. But it was very helpful, but it also made the crew who was out there doing it feel less like they're just out there to sell something, and more like, hey, your job is to go out there, do your normal stuff, check all the boxes, and then just hand it to them and answer questions based on what they got. So it's not a sales thing, but naturally it's going to build that gap from a sales perspective. And more people are going to go, well, tell me more about this filter system that you're talking about that's going to take me from a 4 to a 6. And then that's when the conversations would start. So it made it, that perceived value went way up because they actually got something tangible in their hands, which was very cool.
Yeah, big time.
So we get through the initial stage. They sign off. They go, AJ, this is great. We see you guys put a lot of time and effort into it. What happens after that? So they're leading. I see you have it in the doc that says next steps are this. What are next steps from there?
So after that first pass proposal gets delivered, they pay the full retainer. So like I said, it's 5% of the target price of the project. That's our second gatekeeping mechanism, right? So at that point, if they are willing to pay this, they're 100% sold. We know we've never lost a job. We've lost two after this, but they were extenuating circumstance. One had a death in the family, one was the death of the family. One of our customers ended up passing away, and then another one was a divorce. So those are the only two that we lost. So we don't really count those. We end up with 100% closing rate after this. So now we know we can get everybody else involved because these are sold projects at this point. We go through
real fast. Sorry. What is your conversion percentage from doing this initial first pass to the full design agreement?
44% is our closing percentage on design agreements. Used to be 33. Now we're 44%. And then 76% and climbing. 76% is a couple months old. And we actually had a huge sales month we were actually setting records. September was a huge sales month. We sold $1 million. October was another sales month that crushed September. And it looks like November is going to put October to shame. So we're seeing the closing percentages go up, and all the way back to the early, if you're still with us after listening to this whole podcast, if you remember, my desire for growth was limited by the ability of my sales team's output, right? So to grow, I was afraid that I was going to have to double my sales team. We still have the same sales team that was selling $3 million, and they are now selling at a pace of $10 million a year. So it just goes to show you what optimizing your processes can look like. But at the time that I pulled the numbers, which was after the end of the third quarter, so early October, looking back, we had a 76% closing rate at this particular juncture. So if you think about it, we have 6 to 10 hours of time invested in projects to get them from a 44% to a 100% rate, right? So just that little bit, we're only spending the 6 to 10 hours on, say, half of the jobs that end up getting past this point, right? And then out of all of those, we're spending 6 to 10 hours to get them to 100%. So the limited amount of time that we're spending with these clients has preserved my sales team's ability, again, to up the output, right? So of the sold jobs that we're able to do, but at the same rate, we're shrinking our sales cycle down so that not only can they do more, but they're doing more faster. So instead of selling, 5 jobs over 10 weeks, I'm now selling 10 jobs in 5 weeks. Those aren't real numbers. I'm just saying, we're selling twice the amount of work, twice as fast. So, oh my gosh, it's been incredible to watch.
So with that, the 24% of people that do not move forward after that first pass, is it a budget thing? Is typically why they say no, or are there other reasons?
I think most of it is a budget thing. It's either, they came for an estimate, right? And they ended up paying the money to get the estimate, but ultimately they end up comparing the estimate with some other ones. So I think a lot of these people are more driven by the actual numbers, because I feel like we've delivered so much value. And if they're not willing to move forward from there, then they were never going to move forward ever. They're looking for a cheaper estimate. And, fortunately for us, they were willing to pay $2,000 to get ours, where usually the ones that they're going with, they got for free. So we're still winning, but I would say most of them are going to be based on the numbers.
Okay.
And not
cool.
not because we gave them an estimate that was too high. It was just that our estimate was higher than the other ones that they received.
Cool. Okay, perfect. So moving on, we get into that next phase. What happens then? So somebody, at this point, you kind of know they're going to end up moving forward the project. So I'd imagine this is, because up until this point, especially if you're not doing your process this way, I'm sure the whole time that you're going through a design, you're thinking in the back of your mind, gosh, I hope they move forward because I put so much energy and effort into this thing that I'm going to be frustrated that even at a $10,000 design they said yes to, I'm breaking even on this thing because it's taken me that long. So at this point, they say yes, they pay the other 4%. You kind of know that you got them moving forward into construction, although it's not a guarantee, it sounds like. What are you guys doing in the next phase to get everything kind of dialed in?
So again, we're running about 100% closing rate at this juncture. So we're treating this as if it's a project that's just in pre-construction. That's one of our phases of our cycle. So we end up getting more people involved. We do this design revision stage here. We really want to solidify the scope and the design that we're actually going for. Part of this means that we will do a secondary home visit, and this is where we take more formal measurements. So we'll cut holes, make sure like, hey, we said we were going to take this wall out. We're going to go make sure that there's nothing surprising us in here. Our team knew enough early on to say like, look, there shouldn't be anything in this wall, but as well as I do that the previous homeowner probably put something in that wall that, is backwards, right? So we'll do that secondary visit. This is another thing about, using render early on in the process. We always thought our initial concepts, we needed to measure that 1/8 of an inch because we needed to be so spot on. But when we started to do the low fidelity designs up front, there was some forgiveness in what we were delivering. We weren't saying that they were going to get a trash can on the left or the right of the sink, right? We need to make sure that the sink placement is going to be exact because a 1/2 an inch, 1/4 of an inch can make or break that decision, right? So because we weren't doing that earlier on, we had some more forgiveness. And if you think about it, if you're pricing up a kitchen and giving them an allowance, $35,000 for a kitchen cabinet, for kitchen cabinets, and you're off in that kitchen design by 3 inches, that's a filler. It's not gonna send that into some downward spiral of now you have to go all custom and spend $60,000. It could, if you promise them a layout that now you can't do unless you went full custom, right? So we got away from that. Now what we do is we do a formal measure after they end up paying this full retainer. We know they're moving forward. Now it's worth sending our architectural designer out there, but guess what he's now not doing? He's not measuring the entire house. I mean, in some cases he might, but in most cases we've whittled the scope of work down to a very fine-tuned area. So we can say, hey, you now no longer have to measure the basement and the second floor. Just stick to the first floor, and we're not even touching that front office space. You don't even have to go in there. Now his time, when he goes back out, is spent with a full layout and chief architect, just confirming placements of walls and doors and things, locking things in, so that our designers know, as the next step is picking kitchen cabinets out, now I know my measurements are set. That's when they're doing the kitchen design with the client. That's when they're saying trash can can go on the left or the right of the sink based on how much space we have here. So we're doing this design revisions piece here more to confirm scope and confirm measurements. And of course, the designer has their own track that they stick to. Up here, it's primary selections, the big ones, and then we have the cosmetic selections. And then down here, we do structural development. And this is where our field team is getting a little bit more involved. Production manager is involved at this point. Project managers start being introduced to the jobs once they reach this phase. We get ahead of planning, getting things to the county, getting subcontractor bid requests in, and really, getting that estimate that the client's going to get for this contract down to it's what we call a no surprises contract pricing. We're actually giving them something that's coined no surprises, because any surprises that could come up are in the general provisions as normal. Like, look, there may be some things that aren't supposed to be there that are there, like mold. If it's behind the walls, there's no way for us to know that at this point. But everything else, we're not going to hit you with hey, we didn't know this wall was load bearing, or hey, we didn't realize the plumbing was going to be so expensive because you have outdated plumbing that we need to get rid of, or not the tube wiring. We know all those things at this point, so we're telling the client, you can have confidence that this is what you're going to spend, unless you decide to either one, increase your scope, or two, your house is haunted, whatever it is. So that's the whole process at this point.
So are you taking them for like the selections to a showroom and walking everything? Or are you bringing things to them in their home, so you're reducing the amount of, options they have? I guess, what does that look like in your world?
Yeah, for the primary selections, they come to our showroom. So we have one at Cornerstone. It's a smaller showroom, but we have all of our cabinets and countertops there. We'll even do some collections of some tile sometime, but we'll borrow some showrooms from partners in the space. So we do have a tile showroom, another small business that we work very closely with. And we also have a flooring showroom as well. But for the most part, that initial selection phase is done in our office. And because we know a little bit more about what they're after, what they're looking for, we'll do some shopping for them, right? We'll go to the flooring showroom, pick up a couple samples and have them at the office. Because again, the option overload in that empathy mapping comes back to bite you. And you take a customer to a showroom, a flooring showroom, it's like one selection they have to make, but they have 6,000 options. It's daunting, right? So our designers know what they're looking for and can say, hey, look, I went shopping for you. Here are 3 samples, and I got this one extra one just in case you're interested. I know you don't want, cherry, but look at the color that it brings out on this countertop, whatever. And at that point, the customer knows that we're here for them. We're helping to de-stress the entire operation. When it comes to like all the other miscellaneous selection, we're talking like hardware, cabinet hardware, fixtures, plumbing fixtures, and light fixtures. What our designers are doing is compiling mood boards. So now that we know the cabinets, the tile, and the countertop, we can start, kind of dotting the I's on some of these things. We know that they want brass fixtures. So we'll know their style too. They're mid-century modern. So our designers will actually curate a mood board and say, hey, look, I picked these out. What do you think of these? Is there anything on this board that you would want to swap out or see other options for? And inevitably, most of the board is like accepted right away. Oh my gosh, this looks beautiful. Could we look at more pendant options for the kitchen island? Sure. Guess what my designers are doing? They're shopping for one selection for them, giving them 3 more options on the pendants instead of, all right, now let's spend 3 hours looking at kitchen hardware. Now let's take 3 hours looking at kitchen faucets. No, the whole option overload thing that we discovered in this empathy mapping is kind of dictating how we're presenting these particular options to clients. We'll lead with them, right? So if you want to see all new options for every single one of these things, that's exactly what we'll do with you, right? You want to see every option available for plumbing, fixtures and hardware. But for the most part, most homeowners or they're working individuals, they don't have time for that. They're just like, I want something beautiful and I want to know my designer has my back. So that's exactly what we do.
And that was a big thing for us. Like when I brought up earlier about like the designer came in, she looked stylish, trendy. We never went to a showroom. I mean, at all. She brought everything to us, showed us options. We would she'd be like, hey, I'm coming back out Saturday to present the final drawings, but here's like a sneak preview. And we would go, hey, this looks great, but like, could we see that in shiplap instead? And then within like 48 hours, she would send that over. So by the time that she like showed up to our house on like a Saturday, she actually had like the tray with like the actual materials. We essentially just approved everything right there on the spot, but she was the one driving everything. And it was really, it first started with, her, just how she presented herself, where, if I rolled up trying to sell, because it was my wife was the one picking everything. If I tried to do that, I mean, I would not say I'm a super fashionable guy, but I would also say I'm not an unfashionable person. Like I care about my appearance. I would not have been able to like convince my wife if she was a prospect that, hey, I know this design stuff, but Miranda did. So that was huge. And then as a result, essentially whatever she brought up, I mean, my wife was like, it was such a collaboration. I was like watching it from afar because I was, from a business perspective, super interested into seeing how it all was going down without me like jumping in and like involving myself in it. But it was cool to see like Miranda like saw the home, understood Audrey's vibe, what she was going for. Okay, West Elm showroom, but this room's got a lot of wallpaper, so you want things that maybe stand out but not stand out too much. So like our bathroom addition upstairs, we have wallpaper, but it looks like West Elm came in and like threw up all over the actual bathroom itself. So,
we had a designer that listened and met you guys where you were and said, hey, look, this is obviously your style. So let's grow that,
And that's what it was. And it was so much nicer versus, because if they said, because my wife is very much like, hey, where do you want to go eat? And I'm like, well, let's go to this restaurant. She's like, well, let me look online and get like a top 12 list. And I'm like, just at that point, we'll go back to Chipotle because I don't want to deal with all these selections.
Yeah.
We would have been stuck in selection purgatory if she had not brought everything in. So that was super big for us. Of just reducing the amount, but we didn't have to go through cabinets or anything, which I know that's a big component of what gets people stuck, especially in kitchens. It was just a more simple bathroom, but I mean, that was huge for us as far as we didn't want to make the wrong decision and say, oh, these colors go well, when in reality they clash, and we're going to figure that out once it's all installed. But also, we just don't if you said, hey, I need you to meet me at this showroom, and by the way, I don't work weekends, I work 9 to 5 during the week, this project would have never happened.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
So I think, optimizing your sales process. So I'll kind of just show you this. This is actually something I worked on with my team. I'll go back one. So our primary objective was scaling Cornerstone's boutique white glove experience. How do we do that? And so we started to look at our pain points, which are all here. And I kind of addressed most of these on this call. Customers want to explore too many options up front. Extracting a real budget can be tricky. Speeding up the sales process risks quality and creativity that sets us apart. How do we charge enough up front and balance that with providing enough value to sell it? Maintaining emotional engagement in the speeding environment has challenges. We talked about that. Increasing efficiency can present employee disengagement. Our employees, as much as our customers didn't want to feel like they were a cog in a machine, neither did our employees. And of course, increasing the sales pipeline without incurring additional overhead costs. All of these things we set out to go solve for ourselves, and we feel like we're knocking every single one of these out of the park. I don't know if I built anything more, I guess here. So we did empathy mapping. So this is a good stepping, so like how to get started. We did empathy mapping to understand where our customers were coming from and keep their perspective at the forefront of every decision we made. We value engineered our sales process. We identified friction. Like I said, the sales consultation, allowing them to schedule on Calendly alone was big. We getting the budget up front was difficult. So we have the journey book. We did the comfort zone budget pricing, and then of course the Sandler training to kind of get a lot of those things done. We mapped it all out. If you're anything like me, I love flowcharts. Obviously, I showed you my digital flowchart, but I'll do this on a whiteboard with anybody every day of the week. I just love it. Get real comfortable with mapping these things out, because if you can visualize it on a whiteboard in a flowchart and you can present that visual to your team and it makes sense, they will keep that visual in their head. They will know exactly what the process is. And if you are leading a team, you know as well as I do, it is excruciating to change a process and expect your team to follow it without a mind-numbing accountability process. So if they can clearly see what the process is, if you can map it out on a flowchart and it makes sense, your sales team or your production team, whoever it is, they will have so much more confidence executing that process if they know exactly what it looks like and it makes sense. So we identified our bottlenecks. Again, I kind of showed you the processes. The bottlenecks were kind of in time, scheduling, and so on. We kind of like got rid of all those things. And then we streamlined with tools. Calendly, RENDR, Canva, DocuSign. We used DocuSign to send our proposals instead of JobTread because we noticed that there was more familiarity with DocuSign. And then we could just send that out and actually attach a payment invoice to that proposal. So when we were sending out the design agreements as well as the first pass proposal, we're actually attaching invoices to them too. So as soon as they sign, DocuSign says, okay, you signed, now put your credit card information to pay for this. Oh my gosh, it's been great. But the one thing that I really did want to show you, Logan, maybe we could pick this apart, is kind of down here. I spoke about this at the Fast Remodeler back in was it June or May, somewhere, I think it was in Austin, Texas. And I talked about how we applied a lot of, at the time, I was just talking about what we learned about millennials and what we learned about sales process, and started applying these things throughout each part of our organization in ways. So if you notice some of the things that, we talked about from the empathy mapping stuff that we tried to set out and answer, right? Fast, convenient, craving remote engagement, that's a millennial thing. Interpersonal journeys. And of course, we wanted to challenge the status quo. A lot of the things that we found out about from the empathy mapping exercises, that the status quo of remodelers is unfortunately true in a lot of cases. And that's really what spooks a lot of homeowners in this process. They don't want to deal with the car salesman. They don't want to deal with the stinky guy that hops out of the back of his truck flicking a cigarette butt in their front lawn, right? So challenging the status quo, letting people know very early on that we were a completely different type of company, right? So you kind of see here that we outline marketing, communications, sales, and operations. And what could we do in each of these areas to improve processes throughout the organization that matched with empathy mapping and also matched with millennial buyers? There's a huge thing that we could talk about with millennials. So when we talk about fast and convenient, how do we make fast and convenient on the marketing side? Well, short websites, short blogs, speedy website loads, concise web presence, like straight to the point. We're not putting out 3,000 word web pages, like clean, easy to read visuals. Communications, so immediate scheduling of appointments through Calendly. We talked about that. Sales, how do we get fast and convenient sales? Well, 1 week turnaround on proposals. And then, of course, operations. On the production side, everything is digitally managed. Everything. They want an answer, they've got one. They can reach our team at any time. Remote engagement. So we talked about that with RENDR. I can actually send an invite to a homeowner to actually collect these as-builts remotely. We do Zoom interviews up front. Clients love it. You said you prefer to have that initial call Zoom. Let me figure out who these guys are. We use Loom to do a lot of our presentations. So when we can't get them back in our office and we want to actually present them with this first pass proposal, we'll actually record a Loom. So again, we're making sure that our faces are on screen. They're not just getting a PDF and an email. We're actually pulling it up, hitting record on Loom. They can see our face in the corner. They're looking at our screen, and we're walking them through that entire document as if we're doing it in person. So we'll get a Loom video that way. And of course, this is not something that we're doing yet, but we have aspirations to do a virtual showroom. You can kind of read the rest of this on screen, or if I can provide this to you for anybody who wants to follow up. But ultimately, this interpersonal journey here is this Canva presentation with the avatars was huge for us. We customize floor plans. So if we learn their kids' names, we'll put their kids' names on the bedrooms that they know. If they're doing a second floor reno, we'll say this is Zach's room, this is Emma's room. Little touches like that go a long way. Of course, challenging the status quo. I love that. I love poking other remodelers in the industry with things that they know to be absolutely dead nuts right. Like, really, it was taboo to put pricing on your website. I can't just paint a broad brushstroke on that comment, but there are a lot of reasons why you should get really transparent really quickly about pricing. You're not going to scare anybody worth shaking a stick at away with a pricing conversation. So we make sure that they have all the tools that they need to, when we say transparent window shopping, we make sure they know everything that, is adding to the cost of a project. They're very well aware of it. And of course, digital everything. We measure digitally. We're presenting these proposals digitally. We're sending them Loom videos. We're sending invoices digitally. We manage the projects digitally. Everything about it is digital. They seldom see a piece of paper around our company. The only paper that they see are the printed plans that we have to provide for permits, right? We have QR codes on the job site. Just all of that stuff is just to exemplify our image as like a leader in the industry. And when the status quo and home improvement is very much not technology, well, we're challenging that. So anyway, that's a lot of what we've done.
How do you guys present the final 4% design to them? Are you bringing them into the showroom, pulling it up on the TV and walking through it? Like, what does that look like?
Ultimately, it's usually a living design. So, I mean, we're taking what they got in that first pass proposal and adding to it, tweaking it. So at every point that we make any changes to it, right? So we're solidifying the design, or we're selecting cabinets. We change the pendants over the island. Instead of doing 4 minis, we're doing 2 large pendants. At each stage, we're presenting what that looks like to the client. All those are just usually shared images. If they're done in person, we'll show them on the screen. If it's done like, hey, I selected a mood board, but can we do 2 pendants instead of 4? It's like, great, here's what it looks like in the screen. So those are usually shared via email. But the client at no place in that process is left in the dark about how things are shaping up to look like, right? There's no like surprise unveiling at the end. Same with pricing. They're getting these updates on their allowances, how much they've gone over or spent under, and they're tracking that inside of our construction management software. So they know at all times where they are, where the price is coming in. So that last, hey, here's your final design and here's your final no surprises estimate. It doesn't come as a surprise to them what that final number is. It's been building that entire time. And at the point, we're just kind of like locking it in. And a lot of times that is done preemptively via a Loom presentation. We're sending the final, what we'll call the final estimate design over to them via email. We're doing it with a Loom presentation. A lot of times we're signing those build contracts digitally. They'll say, hey, yeah, we're ready to move forward. We'll send a contract. They sign it digitally. They pay their deposit. In some cases they like to come to the office, and they don't sign paper. They'll sign it with an iPad pencil and an Apple Pencil, and sign it digitally that way. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the homeowner just throughout that entire engagement.
And how did you get your staff bought in on this? Because I mean, did you sit down with the designers and go, all right, everybody, we got to find a better way to do this?
Short answer, yeah. Long answer is you have to inspire your team to instill, to at least pull off a lot of the changes that we've done over the last couple of years. They have to know that they're doing it for a reason, and understanding your staff from every perspective is really important. As a leader in an organization, knowing your staff needs to come outside of the business realm, right? So, and sorry, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that makes sense. You can know your staff and their limitations and just kind of assume things about them, right? But to truly know your staff and what drives them, you have to dig a little deeper, right? There's demographics of your staff. What do they prioritize generationally speaking? Where are they at in their individual walk of life, right? Are they ambitious? Are they looking to climb? What's their disc profile, right? All of those things paint a picture of how you interact with them as a leader, whether you're instilling processes or not. But I think it's incredibly important to know this. We took about 2 years to build this new process into our company. In 2 years, honestly, I think most companies probably would have taken 5 or 6 to do everything that we did. We actually changed construction management softwares at the same time. We went from CoConstruct to JobTread in the middle of all this. To be able to pull off that amount of change, what I had to understand about my office staff is I work with a bunch. If you're big into like DISC assessments, you know what those are. I have a bunch of S's in my office. Well, S's are very much, you're shaking your head, like nodding your head, yeah. They don't like change. They like business as usual. They like stability. They like support. This is like pulling the rug out from underneath them. So I had to make sure that I got their buy-in. So this included, having them sit in on things that I already knew that we had to change and had to make better. And I already had an idea of the way to do it. But I brought them in. Oh, gosh, I hope they're not going to listen to this. I had to bring them in and make them feel like they had a say in how the process was developed. And in some cases, that was actually true. I can't say that I never listened to them because they have informed this process. Like I said, I was adamant about not going out to the homes before we got the design agreement, and they have changed my opinion on that. So, and that's back in the process. But nevertheless, I knew that we had to accelerate our sales cycle, and I knew a way to do it but it caused them to have to do what they do differently. And I had to get them sales training. And of course, the first thing in their mind is like, well, why do I need sales training? I'm already successful. Look at my closing percentages. Well, your closing percentages can be better. Well, why do they need to be better? So it's just understanding a little bit more about what drives them. We gamified a lot. With our sales team. It was, how high can we go, or how much can we save? Our office has a bunch of young kids. We don't want you working nights and weekends, but we want you to be able to make more money because they have kids that are growing up. They want to put money in their 529s. They want to, have more money at the end of the day after paying the preschool bill. So we made sure that they understood, like, hey, look, we're going to try to make you more successful, but we don't want you working more hours. So here's how we're going to do it. What do you think? So getting stuff like that across, little side agendas, but it's not easy. I will say I am blessed and highly favored when it comes to my team and the people that I've surrounded myself with at Cornerstone. And it has made it easier to pull off everything that we've pulled off.
Yeah, we're going through EOS right now, and we hired an implementer to come in and help us out with all that stuff. And when we were like doing the self implementation side of things, you had to come into the meeting, and everybody has to, on the leadership team, write out essentially like who's our target audience, we'll say. And everybody had a little bit of different answers. And the answer that I put up, we then spent essentially the 3 hours you're supposed to debating who the ideal client was and stuff like that. And I remember it came back to the one that I put down originally was who we ended up going with. And somebody else in the leadership team said, look, I recognize that we ended up just going with Logan's thing anyway, but it's nice that we all like came to this conclusion together versus, because my natural thing is just like, look, guys, like we already, like, as you can see, I put this out there. Unless you have a better way of doing it, like, let's just go with this. And we did a full circle to come back to the same thing, but they all now felt heard. They were bought into it. So same end result, but the process to get there completely changed the goal. And the issue that we've had for the past couple of years has always been, these are Logan's goals. We don't really understand them necessarily, but we're just going to see what we can do to get there versus sitting down and getting everybody bought into the same thing. Because I'm on the disc, I'm a DI. The S side of things, it pains me because I'm also a naturally impatient person. So it takes a lot for me to be like, okay, we'll slow it down. We'll talk through this stuff. I know you guys don't like change. I'm obsessed with change. So we have to somewhere, meet in the middle here. But the whole buy-in piece of getting them all there. I mean, with you guys changing processes, but also softwares, like we've tried that before where we changed processes and project management softwares, and it was a bad idea.
Excruciating.
So now we're like, look, we're either going to change. Track of. Yeah. So we dialed everything back and said, don't worry about the softwares yet. Let's just go back to the process piece. Let's get that totally dialed in. Then we can use technology and shift our software to help us out. Yeah. But like changing how we behave and the software is associated with it at the same time, it hurt. It was not good.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've ever read 4 Disciplines of Execution, it was actually recommended to me by a great business leader in space, Mark from Mosby Building Arts out in St. Louis. Huge remodeling company. They have quite a machine down there. I was invited down there to speak to their sales team on somewhat of this topic and addressing the whole millennial infusion. And Mark suggested a book called 4 Disciplines of Execution, so 4DX. And in that book, it's a different operating system. Like EOS is one, 4DX is another. And one of the things I love about the 4DX model is driving a culture of accountability. When you're driving these changes throughout your organization, or even just operational excellence in general, having a system of accountability, someone needs to answer to someone all the time, and making sure that is felt within the core of the culture of your business. It's incredibly important. So when you're driving change, you cannot allow employees to not follow the change that you're doing. When you grow a company, and if there's anybody listening to this that has aspirations to grow out of that $2 million, $3 million glass ceiling, wants to go to that 6, 7, 8, 10, you will outgrow some of your employees. We did. And you have to understand that the business sometimes will outgrow some of its workforce, customer or employees that are, not willing to get with the program, get with the new program. And it's hard to let those people go. But if you keep them around, what they're doing is they're poisoning the well. It's a toxic force where it's like, okay, well, I'm saying that all of my project managers have to do job logs, have to do these receipts, have to get budgets from their subcontractors. They have to do these things because we need to make sure when we're delivering that no surprises contract pricing, we know exactly what we're doing. And there's a purpose of why we're doing it this way. Well, then you have project managers that can't get ahead of the curve because they're still swinging a hammer, or they're logging things with a piece of pen and paper, or they're not getting ahead on budget conversations with subcontractors. You have PMs that are willing to do this for you, but they're only going to do it for you as long as everybody's doing it. If you're allowing one or two people to not follow the new processes, what is that telling the people that do? Like, wait a minute, I have to work twice as hard and he doesn't? Like, what's up with that? So we've had to let people go in our organization that, it sucks. Like, it's just, you're not doing anything, necessarily wrong. You're actually doing a great job at being a project manager, but you're not being a great project manager in the new model of what Cornerstone represents. You are in the old Cornerstone, but not the new Cornerstone. And, you have to basically face the facts that you will end up having to do that with some of your staff. Now, fortunately for me, it was only 2 or 3 people in my organization. I imagine with some, it might be more, and it's something that you definitely have to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Last thing in all this, is there anything that we're missing? I know we spent a lot of time going through your design process. Is there anything that I should have asked about? I figure just put a bow on this thing and move on. But is there anything about the design process that I should be asking about that you have not gone through that is pertinent to everybody out there?
Probably in just a more generic sense, why are you doing it? What are you out to fix? What are you trying to fix? It doesn't necessarily have to be anything wrong, right? So like I said, our sales process was great. We didn't have anything wrong. We had a great closing percentage. We were selling a lot. Ultimately, though, you have to begin with why. For me, it was all about growth in the organization. It was about stability. It was about helping my employees flourish, executing our mission at Cornerstone. All of those things contributed to me actually spending the time to do this. And then, of course, committing myself to seeing it through. If you don't have a good why, and it's just about like, oh, well, someone else is doing it better, so I got to do it better too, it will not work. It will not work. So the one question that I think you probably led with it a little bit is like, kind of what kind of kicked this whole thing off. And it was my desire to grow and, to not do it without, losing my bottom line with the growth. But there was more to it than just that. It really was to make sure that we could provide a place that had opportunities for all of my employees to thrive. Whether it's climbing the ladder and making more money and moving up and getting promoted, there's always space at Cornerstone, because every time that we have employees that kind of reach that top of their, designated arena, like something else opens up. And now all of a sudden I have project managers that, they can go into project development, or they can do production management, or perhaps they can get into estimating, because now we need 3 more people in those areas. All of it was kind of building into this whole thing and kind of seeing, you got to start with the end in mind. I think that's what's that from? That's from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Start with the end in mind. Really get a good picture of what your organization needs to look like with where you want to be, and kind of just build towards that and outline it. A lot of what we decided to do was, can we be more successful on the sales front without losing ourselves? And that's why we went out and did all the fun things that we did.
Awesome. Well, AJ, I appreciate you coming in here and sharing all this. I know this was probably 2.5 hours of this stuff, but it's really 2 years in the making. Trying to whittle essentially all the trials and tribulations you went through to get this thing as dialed in as it can be. And I'd imagine you're probably not done at this point. I mean, your effort to get it down to that true 7-day mark is like, I'm guessing the next step for you guys here. But I know that, I remember
more or less. Yeah.
Well, I remember like when I listened to it the first time on Kyle's podcast, I was like, man, he has put a considerable amount of time into this thing. Like, this is not just like, let's throw this up on the wall and see what sticks and hopefully it goes well. Like, he's probably really thought a lot through this for a very long time. So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing all this. And if anybody is interested, RENDR, I mean, we see you at a lot of the shows. The fact that your stuff integrates with everything is awesome, but it's, we'll put the link in the show notes, but it's RENDR. If they want to learn more about it, is the best way to get a hold of you on the website?
The website is great. They can schedule a demo. You can also find me pretty easily on LinkedIn and message me there, email me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. Don't feel like you're imposing. My hours at Cornerstone, probably one of the things I would kind of say is that my hours at Cornerstone, now that we've grown so much, I might have 2 or 3 hours a week that I spend in my remodeling business. I'm working for RENDR full time now. So I was able to actually pull off all this change at Cornerstone with kind of being on the sidelines and expecting my general manager to do this. But it's put Cornerstone in a great position to be able to, afford an owner that has very limited interaction with the day-to-day work that goes on in the business. So with that being said, I'm pretty available, give or take via email. So find me through the website, through LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of these days.
Awesome. Well, cool. AJ, I appreciate it. Everybody, check out RENDR. It's I've seen it in action. It's really super nice, especially with what we're talking about here as far as like fast and convenience. I mean, like in and out in a half an hour is awesome. So thank you all for checking this out. Apply this stuff because this is awesome stuff. This would be one of those things. I know we half of why we create podcasts or YouTube videos for us at CGN is, this is something that we have clients that are struggling with. Let's create content around it. And it's typically marketing stuff. But we've been hearing more and more about the design process and how to like get that thing dialed in. So, this being as in depth as it is and you showing off those examples is super helpful. So AJ, thank you very much. This is awesome.
Thanks, man. We're glad to be here.
Cool. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I absolutely loved every aspect of this podcast episode. The fact that he is bringing up to people like, look, you're so far along already, like that builds this idea in people's minds that like, wow, I'm just going to continue down this pathway. Why should I go and try to find other people who are taking way longer to provide a design when this person's already done all of that and it's sitting in my hands? So if that does not move the needle with your clientele, I don't know what will. So my suggestion would be, if this resonated with you at all and you're like, I need to do that stuff, again, just like with the first episode, send this over to a designer on your team or somebody else in the industry that you're like, I want to do this together, because everything AJ is talking about, it did not happen overnight. It took time to make it happen, and it took a whole team to make it happen. So don't go at it alone. Send this to somebody that needs to hear it so you can both discuss what you should take from it and go from there. And next week, we're going to actually be doing a rerun of a really popular episode that is Nick Schiffer from NS Builders. I did a whole interview with him, and as you're sitting down to relook at your marketing and what your big efforts for 2025 are going to be, the way that he thinks about his marketing, not just what he does, is ultimately the way that you want to think about your marketing. So come back next week. You're going to love it, and it's really going to hit home as far as how you should approach all of it, not just what are the tactics we should do.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Contractor Growth Network. This episode of the Contractor Growth Network podcast is hosted by Logan Schinholzer and produced by Logan Schinholzer and Dane Appleyard.
Today's guest was AJ Ballantine.
If you have any questions from today's episode, please reach out to the podcast at info@contractorgrowthnetwork.com.